that you could welcome the Kingsville Public Library into your home today and that you could join me in mine. Today we're going to be doing a fun project. We're going to be working with freezer paper. And I've done this project before, but I thought, well, maybe I didn't convince you as to how fun and fabulous it is. So we're going to do something else today. Today we are going to make this really cool little welcome mat a little more fun, a little more personalized. I actually picked this up over at the Dollar Tree for just $1. It already had the little home on it. We're just going to jazz it up a little bit, make it our own. And we're going to use freezer paper to do that. And remember, you will find the supplies and the guidance down in the comment section of this video. But you are going to need, of course, some freezer paper. And you can pick this up really cheap at Walmart, or I'm not sure if the other grocery stores carry it. I've always found it at Walmart. Relatively cheap. It's around $8. You get 150 square feet. You can do a lot with it. It's a lot of fun. Good investment. You can iron things onto t-shirts or other fabric. I did that in another video, and you can kind of apply what I'm going to show you today to other fabrics. So you'll need your freezer paper, you'll need some paints. I have my little cheapy paint. It's just regular acrylic paint. You can buy these nice little craft bottles at Walmart for, again, about 50 cents a bottle. Not very expensive. Grab whatever you got at home. You'll need a sponge or a sponge brush. So if you don't have a nice little sponge brush, and again, you get these at the dollar store, or just take a regular sponge and cut it up. And an iron. You'll need an iron to actually iron on your freezer paper onto your mat. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is decide what kind of design you're going to put on your welcome mat. Whether you're going to do pictures or names, whatever you want to do, it's your mat. You can do it however you want and make it your own. Yay! So you're going to put your design onto your freezer paper, and there's two sides to the freezer paper. There is a papery side and a waxy side. Of course, you want to draw or print on the papery side because the wax side is the side that you're going to actually iron onto your mat. You can put this in your computer printer. You'll want to cut it to an 8.5 by 11 size. Make sure that you kind of flatten it out good first so that it doesn't get caught up in there. And make sure that your paper is going to feed properly so that your ink prints on the paper side, not the waxy side. Then once you get your design onto your paper, whether you drew it or printed it, or if you cheated like I did and you put it into Cricut because I don't have any artistic talent at all whatsoever, and remember that once the library is back up and running like normal, we have a Cricut there that you are more than welcome to come and use, and we have access. So that's always fun and fabulous. But if you don't have a Cricut, once you have your design on here, there's two ways you can do it. If you've just done some maybe shapes or designs, or if you're really talented, which I'm not, you can take your scissors. This is a really simple design. I'm still not talented. And simply cut out your design. Or you can use an exacto knife, lay your paper out, use an exacto knife, and just trace your lines that you have cut so that you end up with something like this or something like this. And then once you have your stencils cut out, you're ready to arrange them on your mat the way you want them and iron them on. When you're laying out your pieces, don't forget that if you have letters that have filling, that you'll need to attach that as well. So you'll want to be able to place your keep track of your little pieces so that you can place them inside your letters so that when you go to stencil, it doesn't end up a big blob. The other thing that I probably should have put in the supply list and listed with the materials is I always like to use a piece of cloth over top so that in case, always test your fabric or your material that you're working with to make sure that your iron won't melt the fabric or the material that you're working with. And also, I like to do it just to protect my iron so that if I do have an issue that maybe I leave the iron on too long, and it seemed okay when I tested it, but no, not so much when I actually did it, you won't completely ruin your iron. A little pillowcase is always a good thing to have hanging around. It's a thin material, so the heat's easily conducted still, and it'll protect everything. And I always seem to have a few destroyed ones laying around, courtesy of Farkas. So once you get your stencil laid out, and we're just going to carefully, and I'm actually going to wait to put in my fill-in pieces for a second. I'm going to just set those aside because I have a kind of a long one laying here. So I'm just going to lay my fabric over top of my stencil, make sure that it's nice and straight where I want it. I think I'm actually going to use the top of my mat to just kind of guide me that this is going to be sort of straight. Maybe, maybe not. If it's not, then it's the way I meant it to be. So we'll get that laid out. And actually, I'm having a tough time laying this out and getting it to stay, so I'm just going to iron the corner just a little bit. Now remember, this isn't a permanent iron-on. This is just our stencil to help guide us. So as long as it's sticking down pretty good, you don't have to, you know, iron it for forever and ever and ever to get it to mesh in there. Because if you iron it too long and work at it too hard, you'll have a tough time getting it off, and you don't want that. And I'm just going to now simply press down on the iron onto my stencil. I don't want to slide it. It's not like you're actually ironing, because if you slide it, you have a chance of pulling the paper up that's not down yet. It hasn't adhered yet. And then you've got this crumpled up mess and the paper sticking to the paper, and then you just want to throw the whole thing away. So I'm just going to dab that on there like that, and then I'll pull up my pillowcase and check it, and we're pretty good there. So here we've got all my pieces everywhere that I can't pick it up and show it to you. Oh my gosh. So you can see there that we've got that kind of adhered nicely to the mat. Then I'm going to go back and just do my little fill-in pieces. And the reason that I want to go back is just so that I'm not fighting everything at once. Once this is laid down, I know exactly where my little fill-in pieces need to go if anything shifted. And it's right where it needs to be. Except it's not where it needs to be. There it is. Now it is. And again, I might just take the tip of my iron and tack like the center of that O down a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with the P before I put my fabric over it and press it down again, just so that I know it's not going to move and sneak away on me. It is repositional because it's freezer paper and it's got some wax on it. If it's not exactly where you want it, you can peel it up and try again. You can't do it a bunch of times because eventually you wear all the wax off the back of the paper. But you can certainly get, you know, a couple shots at it before it's done. It's kind of forgiving, which is nice. I like those kinds of things. So see, now I've added my centers, and my stencil is ready for me to paint. I'm actually going to iron on the rest of my things before I start to paint. So I'm going to do that next. So now I have my stencils all ironed on. I am ready to begin painting. And I'm just going to check one more time all of those little spots that have sort of thin little letter pieces poking in there, like my R or the centers of my A. I'm just going to check those again to make sure that everything is ironed down nicely. And then we can start painting. And again, sponge brush or just a regular sponge that you cut apart, and some cheapy acrylic paint. Will this last forever? No, eventually, if you're using this as a doormat with people walking over top of it again and again and again, eventually, you know, the paint will start to wear out and whatever. But you've spent less than $2 to make it. So, you know, if it only lasts a couple months, who cares, right? It was fun while it lasted. So you're going to take your paint just a little bit at a time, and we're going to just dab over top of the stencil. Okay, you're not going to want to try and be really precise and paint inside the stencil. You don't have to color in the lines. You don't want to color in the lines. And the reason being, if you try and get in those lines, you're going to miss some of the spots, and you run the risk of pushing that stencil paper up. So if you just go over top and just kind of blob the whole thing, that works a whole lot better. And we're just going to blob over top of that. And I'm gonna do more of a farmhouse look here. I'm not looking for anything as solid and fabulous as maybe the pre-printed home that was already there. Simply because it's going to be difficult to do. The welcome mat is a little textured. It's got some like ribbing to it. So you're going to have a really hard time filling all that in. So kind of go into that with the mindset that it's going to be sort of like a whitewashed look, I guess, or a antiqued look. I'm not sure what that's called. But again, with a couple coats of paint, you probably could get it filled in really solid, but I don't think I have that kind of ambition today. So we're going to go with the farmhouse look because that's easy, right? And the other piece of advice that I will give you, it's always best to start at the top of your design and work down. That way you're not putting your hand or bumping stuff that you've already done that's not dry yet. You don't want to start down at the bottom and then work up here. You're liable to hit what hasn't dried yet and ruin the design that you worked so hard on. And so we're just going to get this all filled in, and then I will show you what to do next. Remember, we just want to dab over top of it. We don't want to try and color in the lines. We are just dabbing over top of it. So once we have covered all of our stencils with paint, you can then use a hairdryer or a heat tool if you want to dry it just a little bit. I recommend not completely drying it because it makes it a little harder for the paper to get off, and sometimes the paint and the paper kind of cling to each other and pulls up a little more of the paint. So you want it to be just a little bit tacky before you pull it up. Because it took me some time to do this bottom section, I think no, it's still a little wet. I'm going to get my heat tool. I've used my heat tool to get it so that it's tacky, and I'm just going to very carefully begin to pull up my freezer paper. And as you pull up your freezer paper, you can see that it reveals your stenciled area. And of course, my heat tool today was just my hairdryer, which works absolutely fine. Remember, as you're peeling the paper, you'll want to be careful of any paint that might have puddled on the actual paper, that's at least tacky, so that's not running off the paper and dripping onto your design. You want to make sure that you don't do that. And then with these little letter centers that you have, if you have like a toothpick that you can go through there, sometimes they're a little tricky to get and you'll want to be careful. And then once you peel them off with your finger. Make sure that you're not sticking paint back on to your mat where you don't want it. And if you see some little areas that maybe you missed or weren't as defined as you wanted them to be, you can always take a paintbrush or a little toothpick and just kind of dab the paint where you want it, or maybe you're talented enough you could just freehand it, and then I envy you. So then when you're all done, you have this wonderful personalized little welcome mat that you didn't spend a whole lot of money on. It makes a nice gift for somebody else or just for you to enjoy. And I hope you enjoyed this video today. Thank you for welcoming the Kingsville Public Library in your home and for joining me in mine. If you did like this video, please make sure that you like, comment, and share so that your friends can become our friends. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can email us, reference@kingsvillelibrary.org. Remember to stay safe, stay well, practice that good social distancing, and we'll see you real soon.